Hello everybody, thanks for tuning in again, and thanks again as always for the subscribers. Really appreciate it. Gonna do something a little bit different today. So this is going to be my top 10 most underappreciated films. So obviously there could be a huge list here. I've picked 10 that I just think are films that I'm amazed that so many people I talk to haven't seen them or haven't heard of them. And sometimes there's people that are into the same director but just I haven't seen that one. And yeah, I thought it'd be nice to do this list. And if you are inspired, to comment below about if you've seen the film and like it, or if there's other films that you think are underappreciated. I'd love to see those comments below. So let's crack on with the list.
We got to do the right thing. We're going to have to live with this for the rest of our lives. Right!
Okay, number 10 is Darkman. So Darkman is a film from 1990, directed by Sam Raimi, starring Liam Neeson as Darkman. And this film was made, it was 1990, so it was made at a time when you didn't have all those MCU films. Comic book superhero kind of films were pretty rare, and you just got the Batman film and not a lot else. And this film is pretty dramatic, it's quite serious, and Liam Neeson does the main job fantastically well. And there's a really nice, intriguing device in it about how the Darkman works, where he disguises his face, and it's just so good. And some of it's really tense, and Sam Raimi's a great director, so some of those sort of directorial elements are really interesting as well. And it's just a really good film that's underrated. The amount of people I talk to, and we'll have a big chat about comic book films or superhero films, and they've never heard of it, let alone whether or not they've seen it and what they think of it. They've just never heard of it. So I do think that's a hugely underappreciated film, Darkman from 1990. Number 9. This is a little bit obvious, but it needs to be mentioned because I do think it's mostly successful. And that is the Twilight Zone movie. Back in 1983, they decided they'd make a film of the Twilight Zone. So up to that point, there hadn't been the 1980s reinvention of the Twilight Zone, so this was just basically bouncing off the black and white 1959 to 1964 series. So it was like a return to the Twilight Zone, and it was quite interesting the way they did it, because what they did was they still stayed true to the idea of it being lots of short stories, and there's 4 stories in the film with like a prologue and an epilogue that kind of ties it together, and that's a really interesting part of the film as well, I think. But the 4 main stories, one's directed by Steven Spielberg, one's directed by Joe Dante, one's directed by George Miller, who you know for the Mad Max films, and the other one is directed by John Landis. So 4 absolutely bankable, interesting 80s directors who had big hits at that point anyway. So big names being involved, and there's a few big stars involved as well. And what they've done is there's 1, 2, 3 of the 4 stories are remakes from the show, and then there's one story, the first story, the John Landis story, which is a new story. And I think that's largely a successful story, but it's kind of got bogged down sort of historically. Now it's kind of known for, sadly, the death of some of the cast that were in the film. Vic Morrow was quite a famous actor, and Jennifer Jason Leigh's dad, and it's quite a dramatic element to the film that they had this horrific accident. But having said that, it's a bit of a shame that that's so overshadowed the film, because it's a very good film, and all 4 segments I think are worthy. I think some are better than others. I love Joe Dante's take on It's a Good Life, although some people don't like it because they think it's too cartoony, but that's one of the things I love about it. I mean, after all, it's about a boy who can do anything and make anything happen, so clearly I think it makes sense that they're going to have a cartoony kind of imagination, which is how Joe Dante approached it. But The Nightmare at 20,000 Feet is really interesting. So that's the remake of the classic Richard Matheson story, and John Lithgow plays the part that William Shatner did in the series. That's done really well. Kick the Can is probably the weakest one for me. I think it's a little slower. I get it. I think it's a nice story, and it does fit with the Twilight Zone, because some of the stories were very whimsical and slow. So it absolutely should be there, but I think the film does slow down a little bit on that one. But that's the one directed by Steven Spielberg, with Scatman Crothers in it. And then, like I said, you got that John Landis one at the beginning. So yeah, I think it's a really good film and very underrated. So number 8 is a really interesting film that I just think everyone should watch, and that's called Dark City. So Dark City is from 1998, and that one's directed by Alex Proyas, who also did iRobot, which is an interesting take on iRobot as well. And it's got Rufus Sewell in it and Jennifer Connelly, and and Richard O'Brien, and it's a really interesting film. It's a film that's got a sort of like a noir feel to it. It's a bit of a murder mystery going on, and as that murder mystery gets investigated, it is really clear that something very strange is happening to the city, and it's all about control of aliens, and there's a little bit of a Matrix thing going on well before the Matrix was invented. So if you like, it's another take on Plato's Cave, and it's done so well. It's such a brilliant and mysterious and creative and gripping thriller. So that's Dark City. That's number 8. Number 7 is probably the weirdest one on my list, but I think it's definitely something that if you could stomach the content of it, and I'll try and describe what the content is, you should definitely give it a go, because I don't think you'll see a film like it. It's from 2005. It's called Tideland, and it's directed by Terry Gilliam. So Terry Gilliam, I think most of Terry Gilliam's films are masterpieces. I think that humbly. But Tideland is such an odd film. It is a film that most of the way through it, you'll probably feel uncomfortable, which I don't know if that's selling the film or not, but you'll feel a bit uncomfortable because of the nature of the main character, the little girl in it, and this person that becomes a friend of hers, and their relationship is really awkward and uncomfortable, and considering how young they are, it goes into a territory that makes you feel a little bit, oh, this is weird to watch this, but it makes perfect sense. So it's not exploitative, and it's just really odd. Basically, she is in this sort of awful domestic situation, and her parents die very quickly in the first few minutes of the film, so it's not a massive spoiler. It's like a really quick cameo from Jeff Bridges as a dad. So her parents die, and she sort of just wanders off and wanders around, and her friends are these sort of dolls that she's got at the end of her fingers, and she talks to the fingers. And it's just, she's got this vivid imagination, and she meets this boy, and this boy's got this horrific, well, not horrific, but horrible mum who's sort of controlling him, and it's a really odd, almost fantasy-like, but very real adventure. Yeah, it's just really odd, but it's just an amazing film. And then number 6 is from 1998. It's a film that I've championed for years. Ever since I saw it, blew me away. I think it's such an interesting film. Again, it's quite odd, but it's written and directed by Vincent Gallo, who is quite an intense guy. And it's a very strange mix in the film of being kind of intense, but also quite funny and lighthearted at the same time. How do you even make that happen? It's called Buffalo 66. So I don't know if you guys have seen Buffalo 66, but it's such a good film. And I mean, the premise is that Vincent Gallo's character, because he wrote and directed and plays the main character, he gets released from prison, and he decides he wants to visit his parents, but he knows his parents will be disappointed if he's not kind of done anything with his life. And he decides that he needs to impress them by saying that he's got a girlfriend. So he meets Christina Ricci's character and asks her to pretend to be his girlfriend. And it kind of goes on from there. It's the weirdest script. It's brilliant. The dialogue is amazing. It's the sort of thing that if they like this kind of plot, you might have got the Coen Brothers write something like this. But yeah, it's just such an interesting and an odd film. So yeah, Buffalo 66 is my choice for number 6. So number 5 is a 1974 musical, and it's a horror musical. It's a horror musical parody of the music industry. So it covers lots of different bases. So you've got these great songs in it. It's a horror film, and it's also spoofing the music industry. So it's Brian De Palma's Phantom of the Paradise. So you got this sort of idea that it's taking the Phantom of the Opera story and it's making it more modern and turning it into a more horrific aesthetic. And it's got songs written by Paul Williams, and Paul Williams plays essentially the devil in it. And Jessica Harper does a brilliant job as the kind of female lead, Phoenix, I think her name is, and it's just an amazing film. I've seen it loads of times, and I love the songs, and I love the feel of it. It's definitely one of those films that you know it's like a cult classic. It's going to be a cult film. But if you haven't seen it, absolutely recommend Phantom of the Paradise. It's got a bizarre performance from the guy who plays, I think his name's Biff, who's this sort of rock and roll star. It's just outrageous rock and roll star. Garrett Graham, I think is his name, the guy who plays Biff. But yeah, it's just such a brilliant film. So if you get a chance to watch Phantom of the Paradise from 1974, that's a great one. And then my number 4 is one of the newest ones. It might be the newest one. Yeah, it's the most recent one on my list. It's from 2018, so it's only 4 years old. It's written and directed by Boots Riley, and it's called Sorry to Bother You. Sorry to Bother You. If you get a chance to see this, you've got to see this, but be prepared for it to go off on an absolutely bizarre tangent, and you're halfway through you're thinking, what am I watching? So films that make you go, what is going on is awesome, I think. So it starts off the first little while, I don't know, I can't say exactly because it's been a while since I've seen it, but first say 15, 20 minutes is quite normal in some ways because he's trying to make it in this sort of telesales company, and he's not getting much commission, and then someone says to him, he's a black guy, and someone says to him, you need to use your white voice, and he's like, what? And they demonstrate this white voice, which is really funny. So he starts putting on a white voice, and he gets loads of commissions, and he starts getting more successful, and he gets so successful that he gets admitted into this extra kind of layer of the business and becomes much more sort of middle management, and then that brings him off into this other area in the company, and the film just goes off on a weird tangent. And I wouldn't spoil it by telling you what happens, but it's really odd, but amazing. And you know, by the end of it, you just think, okay, I haven't seen a film like that before, so it just keeps going crazy. So yeah, if you get a chance to see Sorry to Bother You, I think it's definitely worth watching because it's so unique and it's so funny and it's so surprising and it's so committed to what it's doing. You know, it might be really odd, but it absolutely takes itself seriously and run really well. So that's my choice for number 4. Number 3 is a film that it seems odd to say that a Coen Brothers film is underappreciated because obviously the Coen Brothers are applauded by so many people, and they are sort of a team that's one of the most celebrated writers, directors in the industry. But I've met so many people who love the Coen Brothers. I love talking about the Coen Brothers. But the amount of times I have those conversations and they say they haven't seen Raising Arizona, it's just weird. Because Raising Arizona is one of their absolute best films. Raising Arizona comes from 1987, and I'm pretty sure it was their second film. So they did Blood Simple first, which is a really serious film. And Raising Arizona was their second film, which is just, it's basically a live action cartoon. But it's really funny. The performances are incredible. Holly Hunter and Nicolas Cage are absolutely perfect in the roles. I mean, Nicolas Cage is like spellbinding, and Holly Hunter is hilarious. And just the whole thing, the whole script, you know, I mean, everyone would definitely agree with me, I'm sure, that the Coen Brothers know how to write a script. Their dialogue is the best in the movie, in the whole industry. But the dialogue in this film is so quotable, and it's so ridiculous, and it's so brilliant. Just to give you a quick sense of the plot, it starts off with Nicolas Cage's character, who's called Hi. He keeps getting done for theft, and he keeps going to this police station. He keeps going to this police station and being processed by Holly Hunter's character, and they basically start a relationship. And this really beginning of the film, like the first few minutes of the film, is such a brilliant beginning because it starts off with this introduction with his voiceover, and it's just amazing, and loads happens in the first few minutes, and very quickly they find out that they can't have children. So there's a famous and successful businessman on TV saying, like on the news, that they've just had 6 children. They've just had sex triplets. So they decide that they've got too many kids, so they're going to nick one of theirs. And the parents that have had their child stolen from them by Nicolas Cage and Holly Hunter put out a bounty to find the person that's taken their kid and to find Nathan Jr. I think it's Nathan Jr. I think his name's Nathan Arizona. Nathan Jr. I think is the one that they steal. And basically it becomes this sort of cat and mouse chase thing, but with extra moments of just these incredible scenes, like some of the ways that John Goodman's character tries to dominate the room when he's trying to persuade Nicolas Cage to kind of wear the trousers in his relationship with Holly Hunter, or it could be the amazingly random moment when they're seeing their friends and the conversation takes a turn for the unexpected and Nicolas Cage punches him in the face. It's just so many different moments in that film that are amazing. And there's great camera work because I think Barry Sonnenfeld is their camera operator in those days. And he's got a great way of doing all that kind of stuff. And the chase scenes are done really well, really gripping. But it's just the dialogue and the fact that they've got this really farcical, bizarre plot that have these elements dovetailing together with like amazing pace and really funny moments and really great character actors, just absolutely lighting up the screen. So Raising Arizona is just an unbelievable film. So that's my number 3 choice. My number 2 choice, I don't know, it seems a bit strange that this one would be so underrated because it's again a very celebrated director, but I found it by accident and I've literally never heard anybody mention it at all, and I loved it. So this is from 2017, and this is a film by Alexander Payne. So Alexander Payne did Election, and Election's an amazing film. That was one of his early ones. I think his first one was Rushmore. And yeah, he's very celebrated as a director. Right, he's an auteur, so he's a writer-director. And this film stars Matt Damon, so it's a big name in it. And Matt Damon's brilliant in it, obviously, as always. And it's called Downsizing. And I don't think I'm going to spoil it by saying that Downsizing is about Matt Damon finding out from his friend. His friend is recommending this great treatment that he's got involved with, where you sell everything you've got and you downsize physically yourself, so you become tiny and you become part of this community where they've all become tiny, and it's all about saving the environment. It's the carbon footprint is obviously very different, and your whole lifestyle changes and you become part of this community that's really small. And it just plays out beautifully, and this concept gets explored in a way that you wouldn't expect. There's a few twists in it. There's an amazing relationship between Matt Damon and another character in it, which I can't tell you because it will spoil it. But she becomes quite a central part of the film as well. And right till the end of it, you're thinking, where's this going to go? Is this going to go in this direction or is that direction? And I loved it, absolutely loved it. So Downsizing, I don't really know why people don't talk about it, but there we go. I think that's really underrated. And then number 1, my choice for what I'm saying is the most underrated one. It could be a bit mad because I do actually think that some people do rate it, but I'm going to go there anyway. Duncan Jones's 2009 Sam Rockwell vehicle called Moon. Absolutely amazing film. I love this film. It's pretty much just Sam Rockwell on his own on the moon with a AI robot device voiced by Kevin Spacey. And the plot is amazing. The less I say about the plot, the better. But it's just so brilliant, and I just love it. And Sam Rockwell's performance is incredible. So yeah, there you go. Top 10 underappreciated films. Let me know if you'd have picked some of those, or if you pick other ones. I think it's a really interesting thing to think about, because there are some obvious films that you love, that everybody else loves, and there are these little nuggets, these beautiful things that people don't talk about. So what would you include in your 10? Let me know. Thanks.